Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Mindful Media. I am Ethan, and I would like to start off by thanking everyone who watched the last video and left nice comments on the Facebook post. I'm glad that so many people enjoyed the first episode, and the topic that I'd like to talk about today is really a part of what got me started down this whole thing. If you read the Facebook post that I posted before I started all this, I said that there was a teaching that I was watching by the current Dalai Lama Tenzin Gyatso, and he was doing this teaching on the Four Noble Truths, specifically the second one, and I wanted to kind of go over all four of them because they are all equally important, because they deal with suffering and how to end suffering. So that's what I wanted to go over in this video. So the Four Noble Truths are the truth of suffering, the cause of suffering, the end of suffering, and the path to end suffering. Truth number one is the truth of suffering, and this truth is that in life there is suffering. It's a very simple concept. You will suffer in life. Everybody does. No one can escape it. This suffering takes a lot of different forms, from very large things such as, the death of a loved one, to really small things like, getting cut off in traffic. And while anger may seem like an emotion, it is a form of suffering. The same kind of suffering as sorrow. They are what they call suffering. So, sort of like negative emotion, what you would consider negative emotion, like anger or, sadness. And this is really what the first noble truth is that everyone experiences suffering. And it gets easier when you accept that there's no way around suffering, that everyone will suffer, you will suffer. Everyone kind of takes suffering differently, and most people take it very personally. Like something bad happens and they say, well, why is this happening to me? How could this happen to me? Of all people, me. But, this is kind of a bad way to look about it because, it's not just happening to you. It's happening to everyone. It's universal. And once you understand that suffering is universal, you'll be able to take suffering more in stride. You'll get better at dealing with your own suffering. Like dealing with your own anger, dealing with your own negative emotions. Negative, again, in quotations. By just remembering that life is impermanent and all aspects of life are ever changing. Meaning that you shouldn't wish for things to be other than they are, which kind of leads into the second part, but we'll get to that. Some people, when they are suffering, they try to seek consolation in something that is, permanent, reliable, or a sense of self that is more in control than they are at that moment. But ironically, this mindset causes the exact suffering that it is actually seeking to destroy. Because yearning to destroy the suffering will only bring more suffering. You can't end suffering with that kind of mindset. And that's the first truth. The second truth pertains to the cause of suffering. And to kind of make this easier to understand, there is a concept of what is called three poisons. These poisons are ignorance, desire, and aversion. Ignorance being the failure to understand the world as it is. Desire being the things that we want to obtain. And aversion is all the things that we want to avoid in our life. So to break them down a little further, we'll start with desire. Desire would be, if I could just get X, then things would be great. My life would be so much better. And X would pertain to, or it would be, if I could just get more money, if I could just have a better job, if I could just have more power, if I could have more fame, etc., then life would be great. I'd be set. So that's basically what desire is, wanting things that you don't have. Aversion would be the exact opposite of desire. So it's the things you want to avoid in your life. If I could avoid losing my job, if I could avoid getting sick, things like that. And ignorance is what we've been talking about. It's failure to see the world and things as they are. Basically desire and aversion are a failure of seeing things as they are. They're wanting to have or not have something. And thinking that having something or avoiding something, avoiding anger or having happiness, will make your life better, just leads to more suffering. So, to understand this and the second noble truth as a whole, you kind of have to understand that things are always changing. They are never set in stone. Everything changes. And when you get caught up in wanting things to change or to be other than they already are, you will cause suffering to yourself and to those around you. And the third truth pertains to the end of suffering. And not necessarily, this doesn't mean that suffering can be ended, but rather it means that the cause of suffering can be ended, or the fixation on the cause of suffering can be ended. Basically, you have to think of it as the craving for things to be different than they are ceasing to exist, so that you never worry about wanting things to be different. You understand that things are how they are right now, and they are that way because they are. They just simply are. That's how it is, and you can't really change that in this moment. So you just kind of have to, take it in stride. The easiest way to help end your fixation on what brings you suffering is to be mindful, to practice mindfulness, which is summarized as what Buddhists call practicing the Eightfold Path. The Eightfold Path is a very lengthy topic that I might do another day, but I'd like to summarize it right now as part of the next truth, because the next truth, the fourth noble truth, is the path to the end of suffering, which really is the Eightfold Path. And to summarize this, there's 8 parts, as you might have guessed. That's why it's called the Eightfold Path. But these 8 parts can kind of be summarized into 3 compartments or 3 sections. And they are ethical conduct, mental discipline, and wisdom. Ethical conduct is to show love and be compassionate to all living things. Mental discipline is being aware and attentive of all the activities of the body and the mind to prevent unwholesome states of mind and to cultivate wholesome states of mind. And wisdom is, it's kind of like your own thoughts of self-detachment, so selflessness in another sense, love, and non-violence, which you extend to all living things. and also the understanding that all things are as they are. So, just for a closing summary on the Eightfold Path, is that it is the Buddhist way of life that is to be developed within each individual. It's self-discipline in body, speech, and mind. It is self-development for the betterment of all things, so making yourself better, which will inadvertently make everything else better. And then it is also the self-purification from your harmful thoughts and emotions. It is a path that leads to, freedom, happiness, and peace. And you do that through moral and spiritual and intellectual perfection, or what Buddhists refer to as perfection. So ending up this video, just a quick summary of the four truths is: there is suffering. You should understand the cause of suffering, and understanding the cause of suffering is important. Once you understand the cause of suffering, you can help end your fixation on the cause of suffering, which will end the cause of suffering for yourself and others. And that walking the path, the Eightfold Path, leads to the end of your fixation on suffering, which is done for the betterment of all things and all people, all living things and beings. And that's really all I have for this week. Next week, I wanted to talk about the topic of anger and I guess dealing with anger. Not so much dealing with anger, but living with your anger, taking it in stride, because you can't really not be angry, because anger will happen. You will get angry at times in your life, and as I have, if you read the Facebook post, it was pretty much the only thing that I had ever felt for most of my life. And it's not so much getting rid of anger as it is learning to cope with it and learning to take it in stride and learning to understand, what is making you angry and how you can let it go. And that's what we'll talk about next week. For now, I want to thank everyone who sat here through the whole video. I know this one was a little bit longer than the last one, but thank you for sitting through this, and you can leave any comments you want in the comment section below, or leave any comments on the Facebook page on the post that I'll be posting this to Facebook as well, with any questions you have, or just if you just want to leave a nice comment or anything like that. And I hope to see you all again in the next video, but until then, I hope you have a wonderful life.